This is the Dog Savant Podcast with your host, Brett Endies.
Hello, welcome to the podcast. I am Brett Endies. I am your host. This is episode 12. I think we're going to call this one Just Say No to Retractable Leashes. We're going to talk about why they are a very bad idea, why they should really not have been created in the first place, yet understanding the mindset of those who use them and better alternatives to what they think using retractable leashes will accommodate. I'm Brett Endies. I'm your host here. If you haven't seen this before, I am also the host of the Untrainable show on Facebook Watch on the Pet Collective Network. I'm a dog trainer. I'm a problem behavior specialist. I come from a place of my experience and accumulated knowledge and feedback from many dog owners that drives me to both state the opinions that I state and give the information that I give. It's helped a lot of dog owners, so I assume it can work for you too. So if you're a dog owner or a dog trainer, please share your feedback, comments, how it's helped, how it hasn't helped. Send me your questions, video questions. Show me the dog with the issues. I'd like to feature some of this on the show. I say that all the time. I think we will actually. We'll do a question today. How about that? I have a couple I've been saving. Well, we'll do that today. And today, again, I wanted to talk about retractable leashes. And the Untrainables. If you're watching this before the date, September 8th, every Saturday it should be coming out a new episode, and the first one airs on that day. Rate, review, subscribe, the deal for the podcast. It only helps keep this going. I also have a Patreon. So on Patreon, I forget all this stuff. On Patreon, go to patreon.com/the Dog Savant, SAVANT. And Dog Training LA is my website. You can get to anything that's related to me, my YouTube channel, social media, and all that. And contact me if I can help you with your dog if you're in the Los Angeles area. So anyway, retractable leashes. Why do I speak so strongly against them? First of all, they're not safe for both the dog and the owner. By nature, these things can create a lot of physical issues if these little thin cords are wrapped around a part of our body and the dog takes off. I've seen some pictures, I've seen some videos that might be fake. The pictures I think are real of, these things cutting into people's legs and fingers, and just because of the dog lunging, and I'll get into why it kind of contributes to the lunging, but just logistically, it's not a good idea. Even the handle, you can't control this. If a dog pulls, your hand opens, it's gone. And it also has dogs pull up to other people who are not wanting another strange dog coming up to them unannounced, or their dog is, like my clients' dogs, many of them working on reactivity and has to walk their dog or has a right to be out in public to expose them to help work through their issues, but doesn't need a dog running up to them just like an off-leash dog, like I've done on past podcasts about leash laws. So the whole idea is that we want to, when we're walking our dog, keep them within our personal space until otherwise asked, and the retractable leash isn't really promoting that. Another issue that the retractable leash causes is pulling. It teaches a dog to get an impulse and just go with it, and that's good for certain settings where it's not walking related. Like, hey, here we are at the park, go play, or the dog park, or at a place where you're free, or I'm releasing you to go chase a ball or go hang out in the yard. But when we're walking, a dog should really be thinking more kind of back and not having that impulse to just take off, because I find dogs that are walking on retractable leashes have way more reactivity problems, have way more lunging, impulse control, struggles, just because when they see something, there's no buffer. They just go. And it just creates issues, contributes to them, and behaviorally, it doesn't really connect you with your dog when walking. It just doesn't. And again, you see it enough because I'm out walking so much with dogs and owners. I get a pretty good ideas, maybe a better cross section of someone who just kind of does their one-a-day walk. I do this 6+ times a day in varied neighborhoods, and you start seeing patterns, right? That's why I go off on the off-leash dogs. It's really ridiculous how many people have their dogs off-leash where they shouldn't. So dogs have to learn to compartmentalize their thinking, and a retractable leash will teach them that whenever they're walking, they just go ahead and everything in front of them comes at them in a too intense way, and you're more likely to react or get impulsive or invade the space of others and or their dogs. So that's how behaviorally it's not great. Now, as far as why do people use them, I get it. We think we're giving our dogs more exercise in the walk we have. We have a lot of struggles nowadays with guilt and not giving our dogs enough attention or time or exercise or training, whatever it is. So we use that to compensate. It's almost like a quick fix thing. It's like me. I was talking in the last podcast how I was walking with a 45-pound kettlebell in a shitty backpack. And for me, it's, well, I had 45 minutes to get exercise. I figured I'd get more out of it in that time, right? Better would be go on a real hike, Brett. Go on a weekend backpacking trip. But you do the best you can with what you can. But with dogs, sometimes we have to do it in a more skillful way. And just because again, we have to go to different spaces for that type of exercise. A walk isn't an aerobic activity unless you're running with your dog, and they still should be next to you when running. Get your dog a backpack. You can get a little more exercise on the walk that way, but them zigzagging and zipping around and running up to everything and running behind you, and you're like this with your arm, not helping matters at all. So the whole idea is we have to, we have walking episodes, but as far as what the retractable leash does is it's not promoting what I talk about should be promoted in those episodes. Now, again, the mindset of people who usually use retractable leashes is not thinking all this technical. They're like, look, I just want to walk my dog. I worked all day. I want them to feel like they get a little more free roaming. You're going to have to find other places for that. Now, what I do recommend people do to teach their dog even how to go out and in, and if you're at like a park and you're not like in a neighborhood and you can let them do that on a leash, use a long leash. Use a cotton training lead, 15, 20, 30 foot, and let them out and then teach them to come back. But at least there's like a limitation, and you can control the pace of when they come and go, and there's a lot more ability to handle it because of how, and you don't lose your dog because it's like a big extension of a long cotton leash. Just as an idea, I'm not going to get into the whole how to use a long leash lesson, but there are alternatives for, maybe you don't want your dog right next to you, but they should be focusing more in your direction even when up ahead. They should learn when they get towards the end of the leash to slow down, come back a little, not to just go for it. So that's the difference also in just training-wise, how using it gives a dog the wrong impression of how to curb their impulses, how not to be too drawn up ahead. I don't want to get into too much of it. I think that's it for this podcast. It's shorty. What do we do, like 6 minutes, Jordan?
It's about 8 minutes.
8 minutes. All right, thank you, Jordan. I think what I want to do is that's okay. That's what I was going to do. Q&A. That's what was on my mind. I was getting stuttery because I had something that I knew I was forgetting. We got more in store for you folks. Look at that. I am giving you guys so much value for your podcast listening dog. Oh, yeah, that's what I want to talk about, too. Let's address this. Okay, everyone knows me. I get affected. I'm not going to lie. I don't like when people make shitty comments that are based on their interpretation of what isn't happening. It's going to happen a lot more when the Untrainables comes out, I know. I get once in a while, mostly positive, but a trolly kind of comment on YouTube videos I've done or the podcasts, whatever it is. Some are constructive criticism, and I invite you to do that, but some people are just shitty, and I know what feedback people tell me in the real world. I'm working with their dogs in front of them. I don't take dogs in at this point. I'm in front of the owner every step of the way, and all they're doing is telling me I'm helping them, and they're pleased and happy and accolades and blah, blah, blah. And then you get some idiot who I'm giving the same information that helps so many dog owners in the real world, and makes a YouTube comment how what I'm saying no one understands. I think you understand what I'm saying, right? I think I'm making reasonable sense. I mean, you have to get into the mind of a dog, but just go take your ego out of the equation, and it kind of makes sense, right? I mean, my clients they get it, and they're applying it, and it's working. Basically, in a nutshell, at the end, the statement was, something to the effect, can I get my 5 minutes back? No, you can't. I'm sorry, because those 5 minutes are really valuable, dude, and I'm giving a lot of more free time, and I'm sorry you didn't see it that way, but it's funny, right, when I talk about it, but it's upsetting. It's not upsetting, like, personally, like you think it would be. It's more of, like, disappointing that people think this way to, like, go take a whole wide range of my body of work and see what I do and look at the reviews and everything I've done, and do you really think that what I'm doing isn't helping and it's hurting or it's not valid? And I'm not saying I'm great. I'm just saying, like, it's really helping. So why try? Just don't listen anymore. You don't have to make such a shitty statement. So I'm saying not everyone's going to love this. I know. I so know. Oh, I'm ready for that coming in droves soon. But there is a lot of people this is going to help, and it has, and it's humane to dogs and doing good stuff. So, Mr. You want your 5 minutes back? I hope you listen to this podcast. That's almost motivation to do 5 more minutes just to give you. I love it because it's funny because this could help you and your dog too if you just open your mind and again take your ego out of the equation. Okay, so anyway, dog training questions. Let's see. Okay, so we're going to do our first official question of this podcast. So this one comes from Jennifer S. from Minnesota. That's all I know about her. Okay, so here's the question. So she says, hold on. My dog is 1.5 years and is barking at new guests whenever they come to the house. Then he settles in, but when they get up to leave or go to the bathroom, they get upset again. He gets upset again, sorry. Okay, good. I got it. That's all you do. You put a cute little picture of him. Okay. All right, so this is very common. It's like, well, why? I thought the dog, because we reason like humans when we're dealing with dogs. And it's like, well, I thought my dog liked you. What goes on? It's not about that. It's about transition. It's about presentation of energy. It's about when people are moving and dogs are tracking and getting caught up and overstimulated by it. So that's where we have to guide the dogs through and give them that filter. I always talk about that type of training, the place training, the leadership training, guiding them with a focused walking command like let's go or heel, filters it and keeps them in the moment, but they remain present enough to learn. And then when they make that calmer association, curbing the reaction, you reward them. And it doesn't take long if you get them more sensory integrated and focused, and you work on that, of course, at other times. So these dogs are usually reacting to a lot of lesser changes, but the big changes are when there's guests there, there's more at stake. They're more hypervigilant than they are on a daily basis around their owners, or in a friendly way, they're still tracking and reacting to and following and moving when people get up and move. We just don't notice it or we enjoy it unless there's more at stake, like when it's a negative reaction to a guest. So we have to be preemptive. We have to set a game plan, use these times when the guests are there for training, and we have to create that structure, that leadership, almost that prevention. And even if they do react, we have to redirect them into the command, correct that, and put them back in command. And correction means getting them into the focus state that we had already put them into, not punishing them. And if they do that more readily and they start showing interest, where it'll start with a toe in the water, they'll start sniffing at the guests instead of reacting. Then you start rewarding that more and encouraging the actual touch and direct interactions, not just them getting caught up in the transition. So it's usually going to be when the person first arrives. Once they settle down, I always say it's like water. When you throw a stone in it, there's a big wave and then it settles. Then if you throw another stone, and that's when everyone, especially the guest, gets up and moves and starts that transition again. And that's where you have to even show the dog that we're watching it. Because no one, unless you have very severe OCD, is thinking of when the guest is getting up and going to the next thing. We're just kind of coexisting and living. Dogs are like, well, I'll be on that, and certain dogs can't handle that. That's what causes the anxieties or the overreactions to guests. There's a lot of other elements going on, but what I would recommend is create more structure in your dog's life, Jennifer. Make your dog a little bit more present just when you feel that they're getting a little too excited or following or anticipating through the placement training, which I talked about in past podcasts, and I have tons of videos and web series about that as well. And the Untrainables, my show was going to talk about that too and demonstrate it. And up to and including when you have the guest over. So if you know guests are coming over soon, have your dog all focused and structured on leash, make them greet people at the door, lead them in together, lead them to a place that's near the action, lead them through, be aware you're going to have to keep control of your dog, and then you give yourself a break, give your dog a break. So do it in small increments, but you do have to get your dog in the mix in a well-led, structured, focused way via commands, place training, and your leadership. So I hope that answered your question. Keep them coming. I love the questions. Please, keep responding. You can give me good criticism. I'll take it, but shitty comments, I'll just block and delete you. But they are humor, and they'll give me fodder for more time on the podcast. So I'll spend more than 5 minutes on it. Why not? Anyway, thank you for listening. Please, again, subscribe, review, share with your friends. Support my Patreon, patreon.com/the Dog Savant. And go to my website, dogtrainingla.com, and the Untrainables, September 8th, Saturday on Facebook Watch. Support that, and keep giving you more great content. Thank you. Have a great day.